Hello everybody, welcome to the Shark Scrapper channel. This is a viewer request, well actually a multi-viewer request, to scrap out hard drives, computer hard drives, HDDs. You can see I've got a few here. I've got quite a few. I literally have buckets of these things. Why do I have buckets of these things? Well, because every week I am picking up a pallet of computers, roughly 1,200 pound-ish range. 1250 was the highest weight that I've had so far. And in that pallet, it's miscellaneous computers. So we're talking anywhere from 50 to 60 towers, sometimes an occasional server blade. So anyway, what we wind up with is a lot of stuff, technical term there, okay? So we're going to get into these and see what is so interesting about hard drives. So one of the first things that you'll want to do when you are looking at your hard drives, if you do resale, and it's okay if you don't, not everybody does this, but if you're going to resell, which is where you're actually going to make more money, you always make more money selling a functional item than you do scrapping something, all right? So if you want to resell hard drives, what you need to look at, really for the most part, is the capacity. Now you can see on this Western Digital, it's 500 gigabytes. Sometimes you have to really look hard because some manufacturers, for some reason, don't make it obvious on their label. Others make it very obvious. 500 gigabytes is probably the smallest that you're going to be able to sell right now, whether you sell it on eBay or to somebody who is a hobbyist or somebody who is making computers. 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte are the very common sizes to sell right now. I have a very good relationship developing with another scrapper. His channel is Romantic, R-O-E space M-A-N-T-I-C. I'll put a link down in the description below, but Romantic buys these parts from me, these and other things like the RAM and the CPUs of certain types, and then he builds low-cost computers for people that are trying to deal with having to either have their kids or themselves go to school from home or work from home. So he's trying to help that challenge by providing lower cost but very capable computers. So 500 gigabytes is the absolute minimum, and even at that, I don't know. Rowan, I have to talk. That's not his real name, but I don't know if he wants his real name out on the internet, so I'll refer to him by his channel name. Yeah, okay, that's my hawk. Sorry about that. So I think I've heard him say that he uses 500 gigabytes for some of the lower end models that he sells. We'll find out. But he has definitely bought 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte hard drives from me. And then, of course, there's the new digitals as well, but we're not dealing with those today. Okay, so once you've decided that you're either going to sell it or not sell it, we get into the scrapping mode. Now, this one I'm setting aside just in case Romantic wants to buy it, along with a couple of 1 terabytes and a 2 terabyte that I found recently. So we're going to get into scrapping these other ones. What we have here is a couple of Seagates, a couple of Western Digitals, a couple of Mac Stores, and a Quantum Fireball. The reason I put the Quantum Fireball out here is because it has a Phillips head set of screws. Most hard drives use a Torx. The Quantum, for some reason, decided to use a Phillips. So yeah, I put it here just to demonstrate that sometimes you will need a Phillips. All right, so speaking of Phillips, let's talk about our tools. Screwdriver, either hand or power. I don't recommend a high torque kind of screwdriver because some of these torque screws you could easily shear off either your bit or the screw itself. But you know, that you just got to watch out for that. Interchangeable bits are good for the power drivers. All right. Now I also have this hand screwdriver from DeWalt that I can easily change out my blades, and I have a set of Torx bits. This one is S2T8. All right, so that one is very common for these larger Torx that are used to close up the drives. And then frequently what will happen is the engineers would get in arguments about what size screw to use on the insides, and they would change the sizes on the inside. No kidding. I know a couple of Western Digital engineers, former Western Digital engineers, and they would tell me that they used to get into knockdown, drag-out fights about how many screws, what size screws. So just keep that in mind. So having a bit set with multiple sizes is always a good idea. I got this off eBay. I don't remember what I paid for it. Excuse me, Amazon. I don't remember what I paid for it, but it's come in very handy with multiple bit sizes. You will want to keep a flathead handy, and I will show you why. There's a couple of reasons to have a flathead handy. You'll see when we get into the scrap why that's the case. I also keep a small flathead. Again, every now and then this comes in handy, and I don't want to have to go searching around for it. We may not need it for this, but sometimes it's useful. And then of course I talked about Phillips. Here's a hand Phillips head. This one's actually kind of big, you know, for what we're trying to do, but it's got a real nice sharp point. So keep it. You'll want to have your Phillips. I've got my Phillips head on my little powered screwdriver. This little handheld Black & Decker has come in really handy. It's very lightweight. It's a little bit slower than my big DeWalt, but it's very light. I can work with this all day. Very little fatigue. Plus, if I can remember how to do it, yeah, it can go straight. It can go into pistol grip. All right. You switch the direction here, and you just press on that. And I can work for a whole week or more with this in between charges. So nice, handy device. All right, now let's get into the scrap here. The next thing that the first thing that you're going to want to do is get the boards off of the back. Now, this is actually the greatest value. I will put a link in here to boardsort.com, and here's the price the BoardSort is paying right now, today. You'll want to check whenever you get around to doing this, because let's face it, you might be seeing this video as soon as I put it up. You might be seeing it a week from now, a month from now, a couple years from now. So always check the current price for anything that you're going to sell. Don't rely on what's in anyone's video, because they're all going to be dated. So anyway, the boards off of the hard drives are pretty good value. So that's going to be the first thing you're going to take off. All right. And this isn't rocket science, okay? You're just unscrewing stuff here. And if you put your bit into your power driver, again, just be careful with how much torque your driver is going to put on it, because I have had these little screws shear, and if your bit is a low quality bit, you can shear the bit too. So you don't want to do that. That makes it really hard. All right, so I have a box here that I just chuck the small stuff in, because I also will sometimes scrap these while I'm on a live stream listening to somebody or participating, you know, like with Rafael or Snobby Scrap Picker, Dusty Blonde Vlog, somebody like that. And this is a way for me to keep my hands busy, because I don't know, for some reason I'm not one of these folks that can just sit around and not do something. I always got to be multitasking of some sort, I guess. This is padding. That's just going to be trash. Now, you might see a screw on the back panel here. Sometimes they have a screw that holds the arm in place. And this one does not have a screw on this side holding the arm in place. So now we're going to take off the top cover. Yes, I am going to collect up these screws and put them in my small bit bucket. I found a couple of mailboxes recently on one of my street scraps. I love using old mailboxes for my small bits because they're metal, they're scrap. I just throw the stuff in there, and then when it's full, I can put it in with the rest of the scrap and take it right to the yard. Okay, those of you that have done these before, you all know what's coming next. For those of you that are new, I can guarantee you somewhere there's going to be a hidden screw. I mean, it's almost a given that there's going to be some screw hidden somewhere underneath the label. This one may make a liar out of me, but probably not, because I think there's something right there. Now, if you have a knife, or this is where a flathead comes in handy. All right, you feel the dimple, there it is. There's the hidden screw. Sometimes there'll be two, you know, so. All right, another good use for the flathead, once you get that screw out, you just pry off the top. All right, this top, aluminum, stainless steel, one or the other. They're both going to be non-magnetic. If it's magnetic, which, you know, it's possible. I every now and then I get some strongly magnetic, so steel ones. This one's pretty strong, right? So, but look at this, watch. A quick flick and it falls off. So that's going to be stainless steel. Your yard, depending upon how your yard looks at stainless steel, you know, sometimes the yard says anything that sticks to a magnet we don't take, because there is magnetic stainless steel. You know, it's all a question of how much ferrous material is in the, you know, how much iron is actually in the stainless steel, right? So again, you just need to know how your yard takes it. But if they're aluminum, you know, you throw it in with your sheet aluminum. Okay, so the disc, this is where all the data is stored. You'll have a spindle here with more screws. All right, so those are going to be Torx. Sometimes they're the same size as the screws that opened it up. Sometimes they're smaller. This is the arm with the reader arm, and you can see on this one right there that there's a screw head there. That's where the flathead screwdriver comes in really handy. Pull those off. Neodymium magnet, and we're going to go into a lot of detail about neodymium magnets here as part of this scrap, so hang on for that. I'm going to talk about those. Those will be screwed down. I've seen them with one screw. I've seen them with 3 screws. So, you know, you just got to look for the screws. Sometimes the top part is screwed down independently of the bottom part, because there's always a sandwich of neodymium magnets that keeps this rocker arm sort of floating in between. And then this is part of the connection bracket. This is a filter. All right, just throw that away. All right, so now we just go through and start taking out all these screws that we can find here real quick. We may find more. Let's see, are you guys, yep. Fortunately, these guys are the same size as what I used to get them out. Now, I like to kind of go across like this rather than just around the circle. Why do I do that? Well, because my engineering training and my Navy training always taught me that you never go around, directly around when you're tightening things up. Things can pinch, bind, stuff like that. Does it really matter when you're taking these apart? I don't know. This is just, you know, this is how I was taught to do it. So, I mean, in the Navy, no kidding, literally we would have repair drawings and stuff that would tell you this screw is number 1, this one's number 2, this one's number 3, and it would walk you around in some order that an engineer had decided was the right way to take something apart and put it back together again. Okay, this comes off. These screws, again, are going to be just steel. This is almost always aluminum. All right. I'll just leave this magnet here for a minute. There will probably be, you know, more spacers here. I have always found them to be aluminum. All right. Now this part, this has, you know, this comes out. This is going to be different by manufacturer. Sometimes these will be gold-plated pins, so you may want to keep that aside. When it's just like this, I just chuck it in with the shred. The top part of the neodymium magnet, you just pop that off, and you can see it's, you know, it's sticking to the screwdriver because it's a very strong magnet. Don't get your fingers in between two neodymiums because it will pinch you. It hurts, trust me, and you will probably do it. Sometimes it just happens. Okay, so now when you get it on like this, the easiest way to get that off is to slide it like that. Okay, if you try to pull it, you're really fighting the magnetic force. You slide it, all right, and it should come off pretty easily. I gave away, I normally keep a neodymium on either side of my truck. I gave one to Willie the other day, so there we go. Now I've got one for that side again. Okay, now we're going to take off the reader arm. So get in here, and sometimes these reader arms just come right out. Sometimes they're screwed in. This one had the screw on this side. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes the screw is on the back side. Now these reader arms might have multiple arms. I wonder if that's called an armature. Anyway, they may have multiple arms depending upon how many plates are in the drive. Some scrappers have gone so far as to try to remove the little gold tab that may be at the tip. So there may be a gold tab at the tip. I don't mess with that, especially now that I'm going through 50 or 60 towers a week. So you can look for that if you're really into the gold recovery and you have the time to do that. This is aluminum for the most part, and then you will have some sort of coil back here, almost always copper. Certainly one thing you can do if you are into that and you have the time. So if you're into it and you have the time, you can take and snip out that wire. All right, now you've got a little bit of number 2 copper and then just some more aluminum. Now, the other thing you can do is you might get away with, especially if you cut off this other arm, you might get away with throwing this in with small motors if your yard has a category for small motors. Or you may not. If you're really trying to scrap this thing down, you know, you cut off the aluminum, the rest of the aluminum arm, because the bearing part itself has ferrous material in it. All right, so if you want to, you can cut off the arm. There may or may not be an IC chip on this part here, so you know, you might want to pull that off. Again, it all depends on how much time you have, how far down you want to take this. All right, now that the arm is out of the way and we can get the plates out, or in this case plate, there may be multiple plates, and I apologize, I'm kind of sweating on this. It's already pretty hot here. All right. Depending upon your agreements with people, now if you're just picking these off of the street, you have no obligation to anyone. In my case, when I'm buying them from the yard, I have no security obligation to anyone. So I can test all of these, and if they're good and if they have enough capacity, I can sell them. But if you're doing this commercially and you do a pickup from a company, you will probably have had to agree to destroy the discs so that data cannot be transferred. Now, some folks can do this very easily. Just take a drill and drill a hole right down inside of the casing, all right? So you can see if you drill a hole right down into some part of the casing here, you can see there's where the axis of the spindle is going to be. The platter is going to be right in there. Drill anywhere in there, you're going to destroy this disc. These discs are usually aluminum with a very thin platinum layer on them. Sometimes they're glass. So if you are not obligated to destroy them, you know, sometimes artsy people buy these for artwork. You can sell these to board sort. But, you know, as a matter of habit, I like to just scratch them up. This one, so I don't have any obligation with these because these came out of the commercial buy, not a client buy, but, you know, the scrapyard buy. There's a lot of theories on, you know, does running a magnet over them destroy them? Does scratching them up mess it up? You know, you can take a hammer and beat this thing into an odd shape. If you have to destroy it, you can cut it, which is another good way. You can chuck it in acid, which is what you would do if you were going to try to reclaim the platinum off of these. So again, there's a lot of sources you can go to determine the best way to make sure that data cannot be recovered from these discs. Okay, this other side of the neodymium magnet has another torque screw on it. By the way, it's pronounced, it's neodymium, not dinium. And you'll see, I'm going to spell it out, and we're going to go into a little bit of a deeper dive on these magnets. Might as well talk about that right now. You can see that the magnet part is actually this part right there. All right, so it's the part that's raised. This metal blocks the magnetic field from the back side of it. All right, see, no magnets there, no magnetism on that side. On this side, boom, it's magnetic. All right, so you can sell these. On eBay, you know, I've seen these sold as lots of 6 to 10 for $10 to $15. I've seen these sold by the pound on eBay. So, you know, then the issue just becomes, how do you mail them to someone? Generally speaking, and I did some research on this, you know, the companies that ship magnets have fancy equipment to measure the magnetic field of the box, and the U.S. postal codes have, I think it's gauss per square meter or gauss per meter, I forget what the measurement is, that it cannot exceed. Of course, the risk is you don't want, if you stick this in a paper envelope and mail it to somebody, well, it's going to be stuck up against some metal handling equipment, the rollers or the arms or something at the post office, and gum up the works. So that's what they're really concerned about. But if you put a few of these in a big old box, wrap them up really well, chances are, especially if you put them inside some sort of metal container, then chances are it's not going to be an issue. All right, so keep that in mind when you're trying to decide what you're going to do with these neodymium magnets. To be honest with you, I have them attached to one of my workbenches because I haven't decided what I'm doing with them yet. Okay, this is the motor that spins the platters, and some of these motors are screwed down like this one. Some of them are press fitted into the aluminum. When they're screwed down like this, it's really nice because you can easily remove them. Come on, there we go. So there we have a small electric motor. Some more screws. And now we have a nice chunk of aluminum. This will probably go as cast at your yard. Some yards have categories for hard drives. So some yards will take hard drive with board at one price, a hard drive minus the board at some other price, lower, and then some will classify this as either cast aluminum, cast die cast, or they might even have a category for aluminum hard drive shells. So it all depends on your yard. Some folks like to keep these because that's nice clean aluminum for casting as well. I'm selling mine because these take up a lot of space, and it's going to be a little while yet before I get to casting, and I'm going to be able to build up plenty of stock. Right now I'm separating the shells that have no motors from the shells that have motors still in them. I'm either going to bust this out, or I'm going to talk to my yard and find out how they want to treat that. Depending upon how they want to treat it for sale, I may not even get around to busting out the motors. Now there are a few more gold bits on the hard drive shell, so some of them will have this kind of pin connector arrangement that's gold plated. So if you're into gold recovery, you'll want to pull that off and keep that for your gold recovery. In some cases you have gold plating on these connectors here, and there may be connectors here as well. Plus there's the little gold pins there, little contact points, all right? So sometimes you can peel that right off, sometimes you have to take a straight knife, a straight blade, a razor blade, and peel that off. Now I'm just showing this as an example. This didn't come off of this one, but sometimes you'll see this kind of gold-plated connector on the bottom. And again, you just take your razor blades, come up, a straight razor blade, come up underneath of that. That usually peels off relatively easily, especially in our Florida heat where it helps loosen up the glue. And then you can throw this in with your gold fingers. Sometimes this kind of gold plating needs a little special handling as opposed to the straight gold fingers off of boards. So just keep that in mind. You might want to keep them separate or separate them before you process them. Definitely research it before you start actually processing those. This is an example of a connector pin that came out of one of the boards, would have been down inside something like that. And when you pull it out, you can see the gold-plated connector pins right in here. If you're into gold recovery, those could be some good pins to collect up. And here's another example of what those might look like. I've even found some that have straight gold pins. Gold-plated pins, of course. If you are interested in seeing more item scraps, I have a video linked somewhere down there, up there. I'll even put it in the description on how I depopulate boards. You can also hit my playlists for e-waste, and you'll see me taking apart all kinds of e-waste things and towers. And I also have some videos out there on the towers that I'm getting from this new arrangement with the scrapyard. Give you an idea of some of the problem children that show up, as well as just how, what it's like dealing with large quantities of computers coming in. Have a great day, everyone.